And so you've also consistently mentioned Rise throughout today and also through your posts. And you've cited a lot of control issues that you manage already. So when an organization signs these Rise deals, where do Sam and IT leaders kind of most often lose commercial control in your opinion?
I think it's where Sam and procurement leaders could lose control is trying to negotiate the deal as if it's an on-premise deal. If you're doing that, it's going to be a recipe for disaster, right? Because whereas previously maybe you were an existing SAP customer, you had your infrastructure, maybe it was on-premise data servers, maybe it was AWS or Azure, and the business comes to you and says, "Hi, we need like, I don't know, 60 extra professional user licenses." Well, you go and you negotiate that, and you have a fair idea in your mind's eye that, okay, this is going to cost me maybe 17 or 22% of support, depending on what support package I'm on. That's when you're negotiating a Rise with SAP deal, you have to, it's like, you have to consider not only the subscriptions you want, but you need to know what you're going to need now versus maybe in a couple of years, so that maybe you need to ramp up the subscriptions. You need to understand the technical aspects of it as well. There is SAP for like Rise with SAP. They have a document called the Roles and Responsibilities Matrix, and that gives like a line item. I think it's something like about just under 1,500 line items now of what's included, what's excluded, what you need to pay extra for as an ongoing or an offgoing, and so on. And I find that a lot of customers, and quite rightly, you'll focus on the bill of materials, but meanwhile, there's this other beast that can really, bite you. And then, it can just mean that your relationship with SAP suffers from it, because of course then it's, well, why didn't you tell us? And then there's different people in SAP. So I would say, first off, understand the big picture, understand what's included, and then don't negotiate the deal in isolation, right? Meaning, consider not only your other colleagues that work in the technical space, but consider things as well. Like if, let's say you're on a hardware contract, when is that going to come to an end? Okay. Or if you have like a contract for Azure with Microsoft, and it turns out that, well, you've signed a multi-year commitment and that's not coming up for renewal for another 2 years, and you have no way of like reallocating that to, if you move to Rise with SAP, you've no way of reallocating those hyperscaler costs. It's just like trying to balance everything. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I mean, you're not blowing your exactitude trumpet here, but I'm going to blow it for you. So, and that's exactly the reason why people should come to you when going through a rise negotiation or trying to think about moving. Because I guess the biggest risk is misunderstanding the deals. As you say, there's 1,400 lines, and on top of that, they also need to understand what their potential usage could be. So, I mean, that's why you should use you, because those are potentially the biggest risks.
Yes, I guess they are. And yeah, I didn't want to make it into a sales call. But I mean, this is what we do help customers with on a daily basis. I find where customers come unstuck is it's like knowing what to do and when. So I find it's quite funny that when we kick off projects, I might say, I'll caveat always by saying I'm not a technical person myself, but have you been aware of this? Are you aware of that? And sometimes you might get some blank faces. So I'll try and like point them in the right direction, or say, if you have nobody at all to help you with this, I can maybe recommend some names, but I'm not a technical person. So I mean, we've helped customers all over the world now. There's been one customer that had like 50 FUEs, and then there's other customers that have maybe 500,000 employees. I think we're about 2 months ago, I count them every so often, how many order forms we've reviewed, and it was over 250 then. So we're probably approaching 300 now.
And obviously, you mentioned there kind of two different sizes of scale there. I mean, in the ideal world, I appreciate it changes per organization, but who should kind of own that the rise deal and the contract validation and that kind of deciding off of the deal?
So I would say a deal this strategic should be owned at sea level, right? I mean,
Hmm.
but different people should own different things. So
Yep.
for some of my projects, what I'll do, if people are trying to like gather resources, I create like a matrix with the customer like departments and stuff. So different customers will have different departments, or they might have outsourced providers. But I mean, we would say, for example, so if it's anything to do with SLAs or support, that should be done by the technical team. If it's anything related to contract review, procurement, software asset management, and legal, if it's to do with data processing, legal, if it's to do with like the bill of material, software asset management, followed by procurement. And it's just like getting everyone together, lined up, and having like multiple work streams for people doing what they need to do, and then making it all join together in the end.
Brilliant, brilliant. And I know I've spoken to someone in another episode, and they kind of mentioned how organizations divide and conquer, in that they will always try to speak to people who they think they might be able to get a better deal. So I presume that might be a similar kind of strategy in regards to maybe not the strategy, but that SAP might just naturally go towards someone who may not know as much as others when it comes to the rise kind of risks.
Well, I think, I mean, SAP will, as a software company, as any software company, they're just going to want to sell the deal. So I would say when they're reaching out to customers, it's probably more they'll focus maybe not necessarily they'll focus on like the people that will be using the software
Hmm.
or implementing it, and that's like by and large like the technical teams. But then I mean you might see, and I see some customers where SAP have the closest relationship with procurement. So I wouldn't say it's like anything untoward in SAP's part, but more so that yeah, it's just making sure that if SAP does reach out to, like, say, for example, a technical team, that there's like a
Hmm.
process in place
Yep.
whereby, procurement and software management would get involved in the early stages so
Hmm.
that everyone is aware of what's happening.